I'm Susanne Kooijiman, I'm 42 and I live in the Netherlands. And today I will share a story about how I suffered from carbon monoxide poisoning, which led to a mental disorder, and now I can share my healing story as well. As a kid, I was always quite a shy kid. I had my goals, my visions of, what I wanted to be and do when I grew up. But I was always a bit, self-conscious and anxious when I developed into my teens, and I actually got an anxiety disorder. I fainted when I was at school. And I didn't really pay that much attention to it because I thought, I was growing up, maybe I wasn't eating right and I didn't really took care of myself as I should have. But then it happened again and it caused so much anxiety within me because I felt like I lost control. And that was a bit scary for me because it felt like, oh my gosh, this just happened to me while I was in school and it could happen anywhere. So that's, I think, where my anxiety came from. And that actually developed into agoraphobia, and I didn't leave my house for sometimes months in a row. That caused a depression. I still had friends, but I didn't see them. I would call them and they were just out there living their life, having their first boyfriend. I would just sit at home and be anxious and scared and not really know what was going on. My agoraphobia really was like a slow and steady process, really. At first I was just an anxious person, I thought, and I was a bit socially awkward, but I would start to notice that I was avoiding more and more things. That was when I would start to just be more indoors and I would just get scared, even like leaving my own house. So I was like, okay, this is a bit more than that. So I advised Dr. Google. I would just really type in like, okay, what does it mean if you avoid everything? Like, what if you're scared of people or scared of leaving the house? I saw that everything matched like agoraphobia. And I was like, okay, this is what is going on. It was more than like just being anxious or just being scared to faint. It was a combination of all that and even more. So like this sense of not being in control, that felt very scared or scary to me. But yeah, even that, like the agoraphobia, I was too scared to leave the house, so I really couldn't go to a psychologist even. So I really had to practice, like with the help of my parents, because I was still living at home. I would really just practice to go to a therapist. I had to leave my house and I would just go outside and just leave like for a block, just walk a block. And if I would get there without like an anxiety attack, it would be a victory for me. The anxiety always just felt like just this sense of overwhelm. When you get a panic attack, it felt so scary to me because you feel so out of breath that you could feel like you could die, and it was just so scary. I didn't know at the time what would trigger that, like where does this come from, and you feel so insecure because of that. So it really felt like I was constantly tensed and just like clamping, and I can laugh about it now, but I had this anxious tic that I would constantly touch my hair. It was like my hair was like my calming spot or something. Other people would notice it. I didn't even realize it when I was doing it, but that's just how my body would just look for some calmness or relaxation or something to hold on to, literally. So yeah, it would express itself in different ways like that. But the anxiety attacks, it was just like the overall just feeling of overwhelm constantly, that even if people would just look at me, if I was standing somewhere, I would be like, I would start to like even hate people because they would trigger me just by looking at me. Like, they could tell I'm anxious. I'm sure they could tell I'm anxious. And even that would trigger that for me. And I would tell my mom, okay, I'm going home. I'm leaving. It would just feel safer to me just stay at home and just be home. I would never leave the house, and I was neglecting myself in many ways. Sometimes I just wouldn't shower for days, and I would slowly like feel myself getting into a depression, really. And my parents were also a bit like lost. They never seen me like this before, and they didn't really know what to do with it, and they would be there for me, but they didn't really know how to help me. So that's when I found therapy, and like I said, I had to really work to get to that therapist, because my parents would bring me in the car, but like only a 10-minute drive. But for me, that was like a trip around the world. So I would really have to focus on that. And sometimes I would get a panic attack just in the car. Focus on you're getting help. It should get better. Yeah, that was the first step to me, like getting healed. And I would make really a step plan for that healing and to literally like go out of my house. And that was my anchor to hold on to, also to get out of my depression, because I wanted so bad to get out of the house and live a normal life like all my peers were doing and my friends were doing. So I really got to that point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't stay in the house. I was like literally banging my walls. Like I started to hate my walls because I couldn't see them anymore. I wanted to be outside. I felt like I couldn't. So that was the tipping point where I knew, okay, now the frustration the anxiety is getting too much. I'm getting sick of it, really. I needed that help, and that's when I grasped onto it and started that process to heal that part of me, really. Well, when I finally healed my agoraphobia, which was all in all about a 10-year process from that first fainting to actually healing and getting to travel, which was a godsend gift for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I could finally travel. The first year that I could finally travel, I went to 4 places. I went to London, to Paris, to Brussels. I finally could live. And that was some of the happiest years of my life, because I went on to become a journalist, and I went to festivals, which everything, I did everything that I couldn't do at that time. So it was like playing catch up after those years, like about I don't know how many years later, about 15 years later, I was in my new house. So I didn't live with my parents anymore, and I had my own home. And while I was showering, actually, I suddenly passed out, woke up. I thought I had maybe slipped on the bathroom floor. I didn't know what happened. I woke up, luckily, and I didn't know what happened. So I thought, I told my parents I must have slipped on the floor on some soap or whatever. I don't know. I'm sure it won't happen again. I fractured a few ribs even, and so it would hurt whenever I would move. And I asked my mom, okay, can you help me when I go into the shower, because it hurts to stand. So she would actually wash my back and do all these things for me, because it would just hurt to even rub my back or do any of that you use your upper body for. And I thought, well, okay, this is what happens. I'm sure I will be okay. But then the next time I showered, I would pass out again. I woke up in the shower while the shower was still running. I was still lying on the floor, and I was like, okay, something is not ending up here. I don't know what it is, but it's not right. And I called my parents, and they lived in the same street as I do. So my dad would come over and my mom, and they were quite shocked at what they saw, because my walls were all wet. They were dripping, walls in my kitchen. So not even the ones in the shower, but in my, in the next room, that is my kitchen. And the walls were wet, and my dad instantly was like, okay, there's something wrong here. I think it's carbon monoxide that is causing this. So we called the fire department, and they had this little measure thing, and they said indeed there's some problems in your kitchen area, because these two align, and it came from my kitchen, and that's where the carbon monoxide was leaking from a device, and they shut that device off instantly and got repaired. But after that, I thought, okay, that was what's going on. So I was happy that was they knew what was going on and why that happened, because I already knew okay, I didn't just slip twice in a row. I mean, I'm a bit clumsy, but not that clumsy. I thought, and my dad was also, my parents of course were both happy that they figured out what it was, and I could go on and live my normal life again, but not realizing the impact that it actually had on me, that I almost died, not just once, but actually twice. I didn't even realize, okay, what the next 10 years would do for me, but I can say now, those 10 years later, that it was a whirlwind of emotions and stress and hospitalizations and health checks and craziness. But that means I started to pass out again at random moments, where I just in my own home. It happened only in my own home. I didn't know why that was, because of my experience with my phobia that was also triggered by fainting. I knew what fainting would feel like, when you literally feel a bit faint, you haven't eaten enough, or you're a bit dizzy. You could feel it coming on, but this felt different. I was like, okay, I don't really know what's happening here, but it came very sudden. Suddenly I was on the floor. I was just ironing my clothes and I was on the floor. Or I was making my breakfast and I'm out on the floor. And I felt it in my heart, okay, this isn't fainting. This is something different. This is something deeper, something more than that. I couldn't figure out what it was. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was something else. And I went to, for this whole next year, was literally in and out of hospital, because I would bump my head. I have several stitches in my head, and I had fractured ribs and bones, and most things you can fracture I have. So all due to those, blackouts, and I would call them blackouts, because I literally lost time also due to that, and I didn't realize. I just wake up in my house and did not realize what had just happened. So to me, they were just random blackouts, not knowing where they came from. So I went to my doctor and I said, this is what's going on. I know it's not fainting, so can you help me figure out what it is? And she actually thought it was fainting because of my past with phobia and the fainting as well. So she said, maybe it's a heart problem. Maybe you have a little heart issue. So my heart was checked. I had to wear a heart monitor at home for 48 hours. I had all these stickers and things on me and scans, and they couldn't find anything. So luckily my heart was healthy, which made me of course very happy, but of course it left me also with many unanswered questions like, okay, what is actually going on here? So then they thought, okay, maybe it's your brain. They thought maybe I have a tumor in my brain. So I got checked for that. I went inside this tube where they do these scans, so like MRI scans and such. And I had again also all these stickers on my head and everything. And also they said, no, everything is totally fine. I'm like, okay, well, of course, again, that's awesome. I'm very happy that everything is as it should be up here. But still, all these questions left unanswered and no idea what was going on. So I had to go to an epilepsy center to see if I have that, but I already knew in my heart it's not that. I know, so I actually refused to go. And that was after almost a year of all these researches and things in the hospital. And I was so done, I was so stressed out. And I would black out even more because I started to see a pattern of the more stress I felt, the more pressure was on me, the more blackouts I would have. And they would happen about once a month and sometimes more often. But usually once every 4 weeks or so. Which, of course, people can say is not very often, but I know some that have this disease that have it every day. But to me, it felt so scary because I didn't know what was going on. But I already felt like it must be something mental. And of course, it has to do with what has happened to me. So I already concluded for myself it must be some sort of PTSD because I was suffering from nightmares. I had constant pain in my body from just the constant stress, and my muscles were constantly in stress and tight, and I felt panicky all the time because, as I said, these blackouts could happen anytime, and I felt you in your own home you should feel peaceful, calm and safe, and I didn't feel any of those. So I was having these anxiety attacks at home when I tried to sleep, or I was having nightmares. I would even sleepwalk because I was constantly reliving this. And one night I even was sleepwalking to my shower because there was this little window in the shower, and I was opening that window just to get some fresh air. It was like I was trying to save myself again when nothing was even going on. So I knew there was something deeper going on, and that PTSD was at the root of what was happening. So I went to several psychologists and explained all my symptoms. And I think I've talked to about 3 or 4 psychiatrists and therapists, and all of them said, I don't know what was going on with you. I can't help you. You need to look for more professional help or more expertise help. We can't help you. So that led me into this, well, not really a depression, but I was feeling very hopeless because, again, I did not know what was going on, and my blackouts would still occur every month, and I would go to the hospital way too often, and I was getting sick again, also with with the anxiety attacks and the phobia. I was getting sick of it, and I wanted answers, and I wanted to start my healing journey. So again, Dr. Google was my friend, and I just would type in all my symptoms, and the mental disorder that came out was a conversion disorder. It's actually when your mind is sending you the wrong signal to your body. It's constantly then in a state of fear. So it's telling your body that, okay, you're not safe now, and it's safe actually for you to black out. That's the safest thing you can do. And of course, it saved my life when I was, in that shower, because of course, carbon monoxide rises up. And of course, when you black out and you fall down to the floor, that's where the cleanest air is. But it wasn't necessary anymore. It saved me then. But I think my mind was still in that headspace, literally. Okay, when something doesn't feel safe, and I was constantly not feeling safe because I was constantly on edge that it would happen again. So it was it was fueling, one was fueling the other. And yeah, it was just a constant stress, but I was so happy that I could say okay, this is actually what I have. I have a label to it now. I know that it's not just in my mind. It's not something that I have imagined, or it's just fainting. I knew there was a deeper layer, even though others couldn't help me with what those deeper layers were. But I already knew in my heart that, okay, that I had to listen to that, what it was saying, and that it was more than that, and that the trauma and PTSD were related to it, and they were at the core of that, because I felt constantly unsafe, and that was constantly triggering my anxiety, which was my brain was constantly sending signals to my body, you're not safe, do something about it. That was when I would drop out or black out. So that was my body's response to that threat that wasn't there. So when I found out that it was this conversion disorder, again, I searched online for a therapist that was actually specialized in this, or actually knew about this disorder. And I found a great therapist who actually also had suffered from this conversion disorder, and she has helped me. She coached me for about a year and a half. I can say that through that process, I have finally fully healed. I have no blackouts now for over a year. And that has made me very happy. I can live my life again. I now coach others in embodiment and self-healing, because those are the things that really helped me so much in my own healing journey. Because what was missing, because like I said, I always knew there was a deeper layer to it, but I always tried to think all my anxiety and my negative thoughts, my traumatic thoughts, I wanted to think them away or just ignore them. They're not there. And my body would react to that. So that's how it reacted. It would make me best. I had to incorporate my body into my healing process so that I could actually calm down, because I didn't allow myself to feel safe. And that's what was needed. I needed to feel safe in my body. I always thought it from like the mind to the body, but it had to be the other way around, from the body to the mind. So I could relax my body. And that's what I now start my day with. I always say to myself, okay, I'm into conscious relaxation and conscious rest. And that's what helped me heal so much, because I started to break the pattern of constantly being in that anxiety loop, and to actually have that calmness in my body and that feeling of allowing myself to feel safe in my body. And that's what broke that mental loop, like that I'm not safe, because I am. That's what helped me to heal from my disorder.